In the end, it's not the years in your life that count. It's the life in your years. Abraham Lincoln. Nearly all men can stand adversity, but if you want to test a man's character, give him power. Abraham Lincoln. I am a firm believer in the people. If given the truth, they can be depended upon to meet any national crisis. The great point is to bring them the real facts. Abraham Lincoln. Character is like a tree, and reputation like its shadow. The shadow is what we think of it, the tree is the real thing. Abraham Lincoln. Those who deny freedom to others deserve it not for themselves. Abraham Lincoln. You can have anything you want if you want it badly enough. You can be anything you want, Tob. Do anything you set out to accomplish if you hold to that desire with singleness of purpose. Abraham Lincoln. My concern is not whether God is on our side. My greatest concern is to be on God's side. Abraham Lincoln. The best way to predict your future is to create it. Abraham Lincoln. Folks are usually about as happy as they make their minds up to be. Abraham Lincoln. Do I not destroy my enemies when I make them my friends? Abraham Lincoln. America will never be destroyed from the outside. If we falter and lose our freedoms, it will be because we destroyed ourselves. Abraham Lincoln. My best friend is a person who will give me a book I have not read. Abraham Lincoln. My concern is not whether God is on our side. My greatest concern is to be on God's side, for God is always right. Abraham Lincoln. I'm a success today because I had a friend who believed in me and I didn't have the heart to let him down. Abraham Lincoln. Books serve to show a man that those original thoughts of his aren't very new after all. Abraham Lincoln. When I do good, I feel good. When I do bad, I feel bad. That's me religion. Abraham Lincoln. Whenever I hear anyone urging for slavery, I feel a strong impulse to see it read on him personally. Abraham Lincoln. There are no bad pictures. That's just how your face looks. Sometimes. Abraham Lincoln. I can see how it might be possible for a man to look down upon the earth and be an atheist, but I cannot conceive how men could look up into the heavens and say there is no God. Abraham Lincoln. I am not bound to win, but I am bound to be true. I am not bound to succeed, but I am bound to live up to what light I have. Abraham Lincoln. You can fool some of the people all the time, and all the people some of the time, but you cannot fool all the people all the time. Abraham Lincoln. I have been driven many times upon my knees by the overwhelming conviction that I had nowhere else to go. My own wisdom and that of all about me seemed insufficient for that day. Abraham Lincoln. Always bear in mind that your own resolution to succeed is more important than any one thing. Abraham Lincoln. Elections belong to the people. It's their decision. If they decide to turn their back on the fire and burn their behinds, then they will just have to sit on their blisters. Abraham Lincoln. I am in favor of animal rights as well as human rights. That is the way of a whole human being. Abraham Lincoln. It is difficult to make a man miserable while he feels worthy of himself and claims kindred to the great God who made him. Abraham Lincoln. The probability that we may fail in the struggle ought not to deter us from support of a cause we believe to be just. Abraham Lincoln.
Upon the subject of education, not presuming to dictate any plan or system. Respecting it, I can only say that I view it as the most important subject which we as a people can be engaged in. Abraham Lincoln. For people who like that kind of a book, that is the kind of book they will like. Abraham Lincoln. I am rather inclined to silence, and whether that be wise or not, it is at least more unusual nowadays to find a man who can hold his tongue than to find one who cannot. Abraham Lincoln. I want it said of me by those who knew me best that I always plucked a thistle and planted a flower where I thought a flower would grow. Abraham Lincoln. I don't like that man. I must get to know him better. Abraham Lincoln. When you reach the end of your rope, tie a knot and hang on. Abraham Lincoln. Better to remain silent and be thought a fool than to speak out and remove all doubt. Abraham Lincoln. Adhere to your purpose and you will soon feel as well as you ever did. On the contrary, if you falter and give up, you will lose the power of keeping any resolution and will regret it all your life. Abraham Lincoln. And in the end, it is not the years in your life that count, it's the life in your years. Abraham Lincoln. We can complain because rose bushes have thorns, or rejoice because thorn bushes have roses. Abraham Lincoln. If I am killed, I can die but once, but to live in constant dread of it is to die over and over again. Abraham Lincoln. Nearly all men can stand adversity, but if you want to test a man's character, give him power. Abraham Lincoln. I have been driven many times upon my knees by the overwhelming conviction that I had nowhere else to go. My own wisdom and that of all about me seemed insufficient for that day. Abraham Lincoln. Always bear in mind that your own resolution too. Success is more important than any other thing. Abraham Lincoln. I happen temporarily to occupy this big white house. I am living witness that any one of your children may look to come here as my father's child has. Abraham Lincoln. The greatest fine art of the future will be the making of a comfortable living from a small piece of land. Abraham Lincoln. I am not bound to win, but I am bound to be true. I am not bound to succeed, but I am bound to live by the light that I have. I must stand with anybody that stands right, and stand with him while he is right, and part with him when he goes wrong. Abraham Lincoln. And having thus chosen our course, without guile, and with pure purpose, let us renew our trust in God, and go forward without fear, and with manly hearts. Abraham Lincoln. Human nature will not change in any future great national trial. Compared with the men of this, we shall have as weak and as strong, as silly and as wise, as bad and as good. Abraham Lincoln. Let every American, every lover of liberty, every well-wisher to his posterity, swear by the blood of the Revolution never to violate, in the least particular, the laws of the country, and never to tolerate their violation by others. Abraham Lincoln. I claim not to have controlled events, but confess plainly that events have controlled me. Abraham Lincoln. I know not how to aid you, save in the assurance of one of mature age and much severe experience, that you cannot fail if you resolutely determine that you will not. Abraham Lincoln. I have not permitted myself, gentlemen, to conclude that I am the best man in the country, but I am reminded in this connection of a story of an old Dutch farmer who remarked to a companion once that it was not best to swap horses while crossing streams. Abraham Lincoln. I have stepped out upon this platform that I may see you and that you may see me, and in the arrangement I have the best of the bargain. Abraham Lincoln. The demon of intemperance ever seems to have delighted in sucking the blood of genius and of generosity. Abraham Lincoln. In giving freedom to the slave, we assure freedom to the free, honorable alike in what we give and what we preserve. We shall nobly save or meanly lose the last best hope of earth. Abraham Lincoln. You think slavery is right and should be extended, while we think slavery is wrong and ought to be restricted. That, I suppose, is the rub. It certainly is the only substantial difference between us. Abraham Lincoln. All I ask for the Negro is that, if you do not like him, let him alone. If God gave him but little, that little let him enjoy. Abraham Lincoln. I leave you, hoping that the lamp of liberty will burn in your bosoms, until there shall no longer be a doubt that all men are created free and equal. Abraham Lincoln. No man is good enough to govern another man without that other's consent. I say this is the leading principle, the sheet anchor of American republicanism. Abraham Lincoln. In regard to this great book, I have but to say it is the best gift God has given to man. All the good the Savior gave to the world was communicated through this book. Abraham Lincoln. Let us have faith that right makes might, and in that faith, let us, to the end, dare to do our duty as we understand it. Abraham Lincoln. The United States government must not undertake to run the churches. When an individual, the church or out of it, becomes dangerous to the public interest, he must be checked. Abraham Lincoln. Any people anywhere, being inclined and having the power, have the right to rise up and shake off the existing government and form a new one that suits them better. This is a most valuable, a most sacred right, a right which we hope and believe is to liberate the world. Abraham Lincoln. This country, with its institutions, belongs to the people who inhabit it. Whenever they shall grow weary of the existing government, they can exercise their constitutional right of amending it, or their revolutionary right to dismember it or overthrow it. Abraham Lincoln. I desire to so conduct the affairs of this administration that if at the end, when I come to lay down the reins of power, I have lost every other friend on earth, I shall at least have one friend left, and that friend shall be down inside of me. Abraham Lincoln. Public sentiment is everything. With public sentiment, nothing can fail. Without it, nothing can succeed. Abraham Lincoln. The love of property and consciousness of right and wrong have conflicting places in our organization, which often makes a man's course seem crooked, his conduct a riddle. Abraham Lincoln. Elections belong to the people. It's their decision. If they decide to turn their back on the fire, burn their behinds, then they will just have to sit on their blisters. Abraham Lincoln. Labor is prior to and independent of capital. Capital is only the fruit of labor and could never have existed if labor had not first existed. Labor is the superior of capital and deserves much the higher consideration. Abraham Lincoln. I distrust the wisdom, if not the sincerity, of friends who would hold my hands while my enemies stab me. Abraham Lincoln. I never encourage deceit and falsehood, especially if you have got a bad memory, is the worst enemy a fellow can have. The fact is, truth is your truest friend, no matter what the circumstances are. Abraham Lincoln. I'm a success today because I had a friend who believed in me and I didn't have the heart to let him down. Abraham Lincoln. I have here stated my purpose according to my view of official duty, and I intend no modification of my oft-expressed personal wish that all men everywhere could be free. Abraham Lincoln. In giving freedom to the slave, we assure freedom to the free, honorable alike in what we give and what we preserve. We shall nobly save or meanly lose the last best hope of earth. Abraham Lincoln. Fourscore and 7 years ago, our fathers brought forth on this continent a new nation conceived in liberty and dedicated to the proposition that all men are created equal. Abraham Lincoln. The world has never had a good definition of the word liberty, and the American people just now are much in want of one. We all declare for liberty, but in using the same word do not all mean the same thing. Abraham Lincoln. Give me 6 hours to chop down a tree, and I will spend the first 4 sharpening the axe. Abraham Lincoln. Better to remain silent and be thought a fool than to speak out and remove all doubt. Abraham Lincoln. The philosophy of the school room in one generation will be the philosophy of government in the next. Abraham Lincoln. Sir, my concern is not whether God is on our side. My greatest concern is to be on God's side, for God is always right. Abraham Lincoln. I do the very best I know how, the very best I can, and I mean to keep on doing so until the end. Abraham Lincoln. Always bear in mind that your own resolution to succeed is more important than any other. Abraham Lincoln. Don't worry when you are not recognized, but strive to be worthy of recognition. Abraham Lincoln. My great concern is not whether you have failed, but whether you are content with your failure. Abraham Lincoln. I remember my mother's prayers, and they have always followed me. They have clung to me all my life. Abraham Lincoln. I never had a policy. I have just tried to do my very best each and every day. Abraham Lincoln. That some achieve great success is proof to all that others can achieve it as well. Abraham Lincoln. Let not him who is houseless pull down the house of another, but let him work diligently and build one for himself, thus by example assuring that his own shall be saved from violence when built. Abraham Lincoln. The way for a young man to rise is to improve himself in every way he can, never suspecting that anybody wishes to hinder him. Abraham Lincoln. The things I want to know are in books. My best friend is the man who'll get me a book I ain't read. Abraham Lincoln. When I am getting ready to reason with a man, I spend 1/3 of my time thinking about myself and what I am going to say, and 2/3 about him and what he's going to say. Abraham Lincoln. All my life I have tried to pluck a thistle and plant a flower wherever the flower would grow in thought and mind. Abraham Lincoln. If we could first know where we are and whither we are tending, we could then better judge what to do and how to do it. Abraham Lincoln. It has been my experience that folks who have no vices have very few virtues. Abraham Lincoln.